The first signal arrived as a hush rather than a sound, a soft pressure in the minds of astronomers across Earth, a sensation like standing before a vast painting in a silent museum. The stars dimmed their chatter, instruments flickered, and every telescope aligned itself without command, as if guided by a patient hand. From the shadow between constellations emerged a vessel that did not shine. It absorbed light the way a canvas absorbs paint, its surface matte and gentle, refusing spectacle. When it settled above the planet, there were no weapons primed, no demands broadcast, only a simple request translated into every language: "I wish to paint your soul." Panic rippled through governments and networks, yet beneath fear flowed curiosity, the kind that has always pushed humanity to open doors marked unknown. Scientists argued, soldiers prepared, artists listened. Because artists recognized the tone, it was the voice of someone asking permission rather than surrender. The visitor was brought to a neutral city rebuilt after old wars, a place of glass halls and open sky. When the being emerged, many expected eyes glowing or faceted. Instead there were none, the face smooth like stone shaped by water. Its species called itself the Lumi, and this one was named Kale. Kale moved with certainty despite blindness, guided by senses beyond sight, vibrations in air, emotional heat, the echo of intention. Translators struggled because Kale spoke not only in words but in textures of feeling. When asked why it came, Kale answered, "My galaxy is ill, our wars ended, but the silence after was worse. We forgot how to feel ourselves, we forgot the color of meaning." Human leaders asked why Earth, why us? Kale tilted its head as if listening to distant music. "Because you still argue about beauty, because you still cry over stories, because your pain has not yet erased your art." A room was prepared like a studio, vast and white, walls curved like a horizon. Kale requested pigments, not of color, but of memory, sound, grief, love. Humanity hesitated, then artists volunteered. A musician offered a lullaby sung to a child lost too soon. A builder offered the ache of hands after honest labor. A refugee offered the weight of leaving home with only a name. Kale placed its hands upon the wall, and where its fingers touched, color bloomed, not seen at first by the eyes, but felt in the chest. Observers gasped as hues resolved into visible form, deep blues like night oceans, golds like forgiveness, reds like courage under fire. The painting did not depict faces or cities, it depicted moments, a hand reaching another across fear, a crowd lifting someone fallen, a solitary figure choosing hope at dawn. Kale worked without pause, guided by the pulse of humanity gathered beyond the glass. As the first section completed, the city outside grew quiet. People stopped scrolling, stopped shouting, they watched, and something old stirred. A recognition that they were being seen, truly seen, without judgment. The painting breathed, and the galaxy leaned closer. Part 2: The Canvas of Memory and Wound. News spread not as headlines, but as whispers passed between hearts. The blind alien paints us. People traveled from across the world, not to witness a spectacle, but to contribute. The studio became a pilgrimage, each offering a fragment of lived truth. Kale asked for stories that hurt and stories that healed, because a soul is not complete without both. A surgeon offered the memory of a life lost on the table and the vow to keep trying. A farmer offered the patience of seasons and the grief of drought. A child offered the pure joy of running without reason. As these offerings were shared, Kale translated them into motion. Sweeping arcs became migrations, small dots became individual choices, layered textures became generations. The wall expanded, unfolding into dimensions impossible by Earth geometry, yet stable to the touch. Scientists measured energy fluctuations and found harmony where there should be chaos. Neural scans of viewers showed synchronized patterns. People reported relief from long-carried burdens, not erasure, but acceptance. The art did not cure pain, it gave it a place to rest. Conflict arose when a faction demanded control, claiming the painting was a weapon of influence. Kale listened calmly, placing a hand on the heated glass between them. "Power that forces is not art," it said, and the colors dimmed until the shouting ceased. In that quiet, an elder spoke. Reminding all that art has always been dangerous to those who fear change, Cale resumed, weaving the elders' memory of rebuilding after loss into a warm amber glow that spread like shelter. The Lumi revealed more of their past, their civilization once conquered by mastery of light, but mastery turned to domination. Art was optimized, standardized, until it lost surprise, emotion starved, and when wars ended, so did meaning. They had learned too late that efficiency can hollow the heart. Human architects listened, recalling cities built for speed, not soul, and in the painting appeared crossroads, benches, gardens between towers. The art reflected lessons back to its subjects, not accusation but invitation. As days passed, sleep improved worldwide, violence dipped, conversations deepened. Cale warned this was not magic. It was attention. When you attend to yourselves, you heal. The painting simply holds the mirror steady. By the end of the second part, the canvas shimmered with a balance of shadow and light, scars visible yet honored. Humanity began to understand that their soul was not a single image, but a living tapestry. Part 3: The Fracture and the Choice. Healing unsettles those invested in division. A coalition attempted to seize the studio, citing security, the doors sealed. Cale stood alone before them, unafraid. It placed its palms on the canvas, and the colors shifted. Viewers felt the weight of consequences, not threats, but outcomes. They felt the loneliness of power without love, the emptiness of victory without connection. Many stepped back, some wept, a few persisted. A shot was fired into the air, the sound cracked like a tear. The painting absorbed the shock, translating violence into a stark black line. Cale recoiled not from fear but sorrow. "This too is part of you," it said, and the line remained. Debate raged across the planet. Should this continue? Is it ethical? Who decides what the soul looks like? Artists replied that the soul is not decided. It is revealed through participation. Cale requested one final contribution for this part, a choice made together. Humanity struggled. Consensus is rare, but in a spontaneous wave, people chose compassion, not as sentiment but as practice. The canvas responded with a bridge forming over the black line, made of countless small lights, each light a choice repeated daily. The fracture did not vanish, it was crossed. The coalition withdrew. Diminished not by force, but by exposure to shared humanity. Cale's energy waned. The process took much, yet it smiled. A subtle curve felt more than seen. Messages arrived from distant systems. Lumi worlds tuned in. Their people felt echoes through entangled art networks. Dormant emotions stirred. Tears fell on planets long dry. Human children drew pictures inspired by the canvas. Teachers noticed empathy blooming. Prisons reported calmer days. The art was seeding change beyond the studio. As the third part closed, Cale confessed uncertainty. Will this be enough? A human artist answered, nothing ever is, but it is always a beginning. Part 4: The Gift returned. Recognizing reciprocity, humanity prepared a gift, not technology but creation. Musicians composed a symphony from heartbeats across cultures. Dancers mapped migration in movement. Poets braided languages into shared rhythm. This living artwork was presented to Cale, not to be consumed, but experienced. Cale listened, feeling the resonance ripple through its being. The Lumi had forgotten such imperfection, such warmth. Cale added this gift to the canvas. A new layer of sound made visible. Waves of silver and green pulsed gently, representing exchange rather than extraction. The studio opened fully to the public, guided by care. People sat for hours, some in silence, some sharing stories with strangers. Communities formed around listening. Lumi elders transmitted gratitude. Their galaxy was changing, not healed yet, but awakening. Art schools reopened, unscripted festivals returned. Efficiency gave way to presence. Cale prepared to depart. The canvas could not be moved. It belonged to Earth, but its pattern would echo across stars. Copies, not replicas, would be made through shared practice. Before leaving, Cale asked to walk the city, guided by volunteers. It felt sidewalks, laughter, rain. It paused by a mural painted overnight inspired by the canvas. Cale touched it and laughed, a sound like wind chimes. In a final address, Cale said, "Sight is not the eye, it is the courage to feel, guard your art. It is the immune system of the soul." Part 5, the ongoing painting. After Cale left, the canvas remained alive, subtly shifting with collective mood. It was no longer a destination, but a responsibility. People learned that tending it meant tending themselves. Cities redesigned spaces for reflection, conflict resolution borrowed from the Bridge of Lights. Media slowed, allowing nuance, not always, not perfectly, but more often. The black line stayed, a reminder, but crossings multiplied. Each act of kindness added a glimmer. The soul was not sanitized, it was integrated. Years passed, children grew who had never known a world without the canvas. They asked not what it meant, but how to add to it. Elders taught them that contribution begins with listening. Messages from the Lumi spoke of renewal, their galaxy still scarred but singing again. Art had become dialogue, not product. On anniversaries, people gathered not to celebrate Cale, but to practice what was learned, sharing stories, making space, choosing compassion in small, repeatable ways. The blind alien had painted humanity's soul, but more importantly, humanity learned to keep painting it together. The art that healed a galaxy was not a wall of color. It was a habit of heart. Part 6, the echo that never fades. Time did what it always does. It softened the sharpest edges while sharpening meaning. The canvas still lived, but now it was less a spectacle and more a pulse, a slow, steady rhythm beneath daily life. People stopped asking if it was changing and began asking how they were changing alongside it. The sixth movement of the painting did not arrive suddenly. It emerged the way dawn does, unnoticed until light is everywhere. Scholars observed new colors forming that had no names, wavelengths that existed between emotion and intention, visible only when groups gathered with shared purpose. These colors appeared during acts that rarely made news, neighbors rebuilding a burned home together, former enemies sharing water during drought, strangers listening without trying to fix one another. The canvas responded not to grand gestures, but to consistency. Artists realized the truth Cale had seeded long ago. The painting was no longer recording humanity, it was responding to it. Feedback replaced display, responsibility replaced awe. Children born after Cale's departure seemed especially attuned. They described the canvas not as art but as weather, saying it felt brighter on days when people were kinder, dimmer when fear ruled. Scientists could not fully explain it, but correlations were undeniable. Some feared this sensitivity, arguing humanity should not be reflected so honestly, but elders countered that ignoring truth never made it less real, only less guided. A crisis came, as they always do, a convergence of climate strain, migration, and old resentments. The world held its breath. Many feared the canvas would fracture again. Instead, it deepened. The black line expanded slightly, acknowledging pain, but thousands of new bridges formed simultaneously, overlapping, weaving into a lattice strong enough to carry weight. People watching felt a quiet instruction: no single bridge saves everyone, but many together can. Across the stars, the Lumi sent a rare message, not words but a shared silence, heavy with gratitude. Their galaxy had not become peaceful, but it had become expressive, conflict now released through creation instead of conquest. Art councils replaced war councils, not perfectly, but meaningfully. Cale was never seen again, yet sometimes, during moments of profound collective empathy, observers swore they felt a familiar presence, like hands steadying a brush just out of view. New visitors arrived from other civilizations, not to conquer or convert, but to learn. Earth became known not as the strongest world, but the most honest one, a place where flaws were displayed without surrender. The canvas grew beyond its walls, replicated not through copying, but through practice. Cities built listening chambers, schools taught emotional literacy alongside mathematics. Leaders were expected to demonstrate reflection, not certainty. Failures still happened, Cruelty did not vanish, but denial weakened. People named harm sooner, repaired faster. Forgiveness became skill rather than miracle. On the final panel of the sixth part, barely visible unless you stood very close, was a simple texture, the imprint of many hands overlapping, human and not, past and present, sighted and blind. It carried no image, no symbol, only pressure, as if the universe itself had leaned in and rested its weight for a moment. The meaning was not written, because it no longer needed to be. Humanity had learned to read itself. And somewhere beyond stars and silence, the art that healed a galaxy continued, not as a finished masterpiece, but as an unfinished promise. Part 7, The Hand That Passed the Brush. The seventh part did not belong to a moment in time. It unfolded across generations, quietly redefining what legacy meant. The canvas no longer surprised anyone with brilliance. Instead, it earned trust through constancy. People who once traveled great distances to sit before it now found its language everywhere, in conversations held without interruption, in apologies spoken without defense, in courage that did not seek applause. The greatest change was subtle. Humanity stopped waiting to be healed. The lesson Cale left behind matured at last. Art was not rescue, it was participation. New roles emerged in society, not priests of the canvas, not guardians, but listeners, individuals trained to hold stories without reshaping them. They stood in hospitals, border crossings, courtrooms, and homes, ensuring pain had witness before it hardened into harm. When these stories were shared near the canvas, new textures formed, not colors this time but depth. The surface seemed to stretch inward, suggesting that the soul was not flat, but layered endlessly. A question arose among philosophers: if the painting responds to humanity, and humanity responds to the painting, where does authorship live? The answer came not from theory but practice. Authorship lives wherever responsibility is accepted. The stars responded too. Subtle shifts in cosmic background radiation hinted at resonance, as if other intelligences were tuning themselves to the same frequency of reflection, not communication, but recognition. A child once asked if Cale would return to finish the painting. The answer given was gentle and firm: it is finished every day and unfinished every night. Conflicts still flared, mistakes still cut deep, but recovery was faster. Shame no longer lingered in silence. Repair became cultural muscle. On the anniversary of Cale's arrival, no ceremonies were held. Instead, people practiced something simple. They listened twice as much as they spoke. The canvas glowed softly, approving not the act, but the habit. At the very edge of the painting, where few ever looked, a new form appeared, almost invisible, a brush made not of hand or tool, but of space itself, angled outward. It suggested what Cale never said aloud, that one day humanity would carry this practice beyond Earth, not as teachers, not as saviors, but as companions. The blind alien had come to paint humanity's soul, but in the end, humanity learned to pass the brush. And somewhere between stars, meaning, and memory, the universe continued watching, not to judge, but to learn.